There we go. We're going to go ahead and get started with dealing with difficult stakeholders this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are watching from. I am trying to get my camera on, and for some reason it does not appear to be working. There we are. Hello, everyone. There we go. So today we are talking about dealing with difficult stakeholders. And we do have some copyright information for you. This document is not for use or disclosure outside of those who attend this webinar and may not be copied, recorded, or reproduced in any manner, in whole or in part, without the prior written consent of RMC Learning Solutions. My name is Cheryl Karstens, and I'm the Manager of Curriculum Development and a trainer here at RMC Learning Solutions. I am a leader of the RMC Learning Solutions practice. I have 20 plus years of experience in training and development, project management, agile, hybrid, business analysis, and leadership development. And so what that means is I went to school long ago. I have a BA in Human Resources from Metropolitan State University in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And after I finished schooling there, I worked for a couple different companies and ended up at RMC Learning Solutions, taking all of my background in human resources and all of the different industries that I worked in and put them all together to work towards a more comprehensive goal of project management, dealing with agile and hybrid and business analysis, leadership development, all of those pieces and putting them all together. I am also a 3-time speaker at PMI Global Summit, and I will be speaking this year, September 20th, 2024 in Los Angeles. So a little bit about RMC Learning Solutions. So we were founded in 1991 by Rita Mulcahy. She was studying for her PMP exam and found that there were not a lot, if any, resources other than the PMBOK guide in which for her to study for taking that exam. And so she wrote a book. So she wrote the PMP exam prep book, and now we have helped over 1 million professionals prepare for certification exams in project management, business analysis, and agile. We also have numerous learning solutions and products ranging from self-study to e-learning to classroom and instructor-led virtual. And that is what I do as a member of the staff within RMC Learning Solutions, as I create courses, the instructor-led virtual courses, and create those for all of you to take to help you either pass the certification exams or take some of our leadership development courses. We currently teach in 60 regions and 18 languages around the world, and we have outcome-based learning through professional instructors, coaches, and mentors. And what that means is, as a result of attending this session today, you will have action items that you will be able to implement right away and get started as a result of attending this session today. So we're going to look at a couple different things in our agenda today. We are going to answer your questions and more. We're going to do that based on what is a difficult stakeholder behavior. We're going to talk about what that is and how we can approach it, how to best approach positive engagement with these stakeholders, why it is part of the exam content outline, which we do with every one of these particular webinars, and then 3 tips that you can use today And then lastly, we will be answering questions at the end of our session today. So if you do have any questions as we go along, you can certainly put those into the question box, and we will answer those either as we go through or at the end, depending on where they fall into the curriculum that we're going through today. So what is difficult stakeholder behavior? Difficult is a relative term. Which behaviors create more problems? What can we do about them? Although it's tempting to respond directly to stakeholders with "you should do this," we must recognize our response that may appear critical. So we want to make sure that in this webinar, we will explore how leaders can better identify and deal with difficult stakeholder behavior. And first, we must recognize what that difficult behavior might look like. So, difficult behavior, it can start with a lack of trust. It can be unclear roles. We can have competing priorities, personal biases, communication barriers, and the person may be resistant to change. So all of these can lead to a quote unquote difficult stakeholder. But really we're looking at what is the reason for all of these different aspects of a stakeholder. So why are they being difficult? Why is the role unclear? What is the competing priorities? What personal bias do they have? How is that affecting what we are doing? What are those communication barriers? And how are they resistant to change? And so when we start to look at how all of these different degrees can vary and can help us to know our stakeholders better, but then also recognize that some of these behaviors are very difficult to deal with. And when we have a lack of trust, for example, it can become very debilitating as a stakeholder that's working with someone who has that lack of trust. And so when we are trying to do is we're trying to build trust. We're trying to have clearer roles. We are talking about competing priorities, but looking at it from an open perspective. The personal biases. What is the bias? How are we going to address it? And what are we going to do to try to make this difficult stakeholder more easy to work with and be able to work with them on a daily basis if needed? And then our personal biases. Is it towards the product? Is it towards the service? What is that personal bias actually telling us? And what are we going to try to learn from that? And our communication barriers. How can we use those barriers to help us work in a better situation and to get along better with each other? And then rather than being resistant to change, we're open to change. We're able to talk through change, talk about what's happening, why it's happening, and what is the result going to be as a result of this change. So we can take all of these difficult pieces of stakeholder management and we can put them all into a positive or more positive spin. Now, one of the reasons that this is difficult to do is because if we are dealing with a difficult stakeholder, they are not always open to all of this positivity that we are trying to get open for this new person. So here's an example. Example's name is Gabriel, and Gabriel is new to our office. She is very eager to please. She's high functioning. She is working her butt off. She is doing everything that she can to get ahead in our industry. And she works well with others. The problem is she is a nightmare to people in other departments. And so when we have to deal with Gabriel and some of the ramifications of what she does outside of our office, she can make it very, very difficult. And so even though I personally get along great with Gabriel, it makes it really difficult to work with her on a day-to-day basis when I know that she's going out to other people in other departments and making it very difficult to work with her. Then I'm having other coworkers coming to me and complaining about her, complaining about the way that she talks to them, the way that she makes them feel. And all of these things are based on her drive. She really wants to do a good job. She doesn't realize that her behavior is affecting her outside of our department, which when you work for a smaller department and a smaller organization can be really detrimental to the entire organization. And so when I had to sit down with Gabriel and sit down and talk to her about her behavior outside of the department, she at first was very surprised and very caught off guard that some of her actions had come back to talk, and the people that she had had these interactions with came back to talk to me. And when I talked to her, I talked about being new to the office and how when you're meeting people, whether it's within our own department or within the organization itself, we all are part of the team and that we all need to work together. And so how to best approach the positive engagements is very important to help her understand what she is doing within her organization, that she's eager to please within our department, but she needs to be eager to please throughout the organization, and that most of the time what she is working on isn't so important that she has the right or that she has the ability to make somebody else feel bad or wonder what they are doing in their own organization. And so part of our conversation was having her understand and deal with interactions outside of the department and how to speak to people outside of our department in order to have a better overall case and to be able to speak to someone with respect, speak to them with dignity, and not try to make them feel less than because they are working in a different part of the organization. And Gabrielle and I had a great conversation, and she was able to see what is going to work well outside of our department. Now, it hasn't been very long, and so far she's been great, but it is very important for our employees to understand what that means to be able to speak to people outside of our department with the same level of respect that she does to the people within our department. So how to best approach positive engagement with these stakeholders. So Gallup defines employee engagement as the involvement and enthusiasm of employees in their work and their workplace. So if we have employees who are already happy, who are already engaged, then those are the people that we want to keep engaged with our employees, with the people within the organization, and hopefully are doing a great job for all of us. The other portion of that is 70% of team engagement is determined solely by the manager. And so this is very important. 70% of the team engagement is determined solely by the manager. And so if we are not the manager within our departments, within those sections within our organization, we have a lot of work to do because we need to make up for the lack of engagement of our managers in many cases. So what that means is when we are trying to have our difficult employees become more engaged with us in our organizations, and we don't have a manager who is really working towards team engagement, we need to find ways to do that ourselves. So employees that make decisions and take actions every day that may affect your workplace and your organization, how the organization treats its employees and how employees treat one another can positively affect their actions, or it can place the organization in a bitter battle daily. Gallup knows that engaged employees can produce better business results, and they can do that better than employees that are working within or outside of the industry, the company, the nationality. They can create good economic times and bad economic times. And so one of the things that we need to be able to do, whether or not we are that manager, is we need to speak to our employees or our fellow team members about how we are engaged, how we are encouraging other people, and how we are able to continue to go forward, making our workplace a better and more satisfying place to begin working every single day. So part of what we need to do in that is go on a fact-finding mission. And so with Gabrielle, when I was speaking with her, I started off by, tell me about your experience. Tell me about this situation with this employee. I was asking questions to find out more information from her. And the most important piece of that was I wanted to find out if she knew that somebody was upset. And if she knew, what was she going to do about it? And then I was able to, after speaking to her and finding out some of these situations that she did know that people were upset with her, then I could use my sentences to better structure the way that I was coaching her, even though she would not have said that I was coaching her. I find that when I speak with people, when I am working with another person within the department, I am trying to understand how you knew that this person was upset, but you did not do anything about it. Using some of these types of statements helps us to be able to talk to our stakeholders, the difficult and the not so difficult, and find out more information. Because the other thing that I realized with speaking with Gabrielle is that not everything was as bad as when someone came and talked to me about it as they made it to seem. So Gabrielle, when she told me her side of the story, many times it was not seemed as bad as when the person that came to me told me that same story. And so part of what I realized is that in some cases, Gabrielle was minimizing exactly what had happened. And I believe that in some cases, it was maximized on the other side. And so part of what we're looking at when we're talking about difficult stakeholders is they are continuing to think about that circumstance, and that manifests within itself, and it makes it worse. And Gabrielle, what she was doing, because she wasn't dealing with a lot of the animosity or different things that were happening outside of the department, she didn't think about it. She didn't give it a lot of thought after it happened. So part of what we were doing, we were staying calm. I was not assuming that she was right or wrong. I was trying to get more information. And that's really important when we start to look at our difficult stakeholders and how to overcome any issues that they may be having. So part of this goes back to that Gallup poll that I was just referring to. And it looks at the idea of what happened in our past and what happens in our future. And this is a changing perspective for many people in the workplace. So in the past, people were primarily looking at their paycheck, how happy they were, their relationship with their boss, how it all was reflected on their annual review, what their weaknesses were, and how all of this was impacting their job. As we move forward, we are finding that more people are looking at their jobs as a more holistic part of their life. And that last word should say my life, not my live. So they're looking at their overall purpose. So are they living out part of their purpose within the realms of your job or their job or within that organization? Are they looking at their personal development? As I said with Gabrielle, she is brand new to the organization. So she's looking at her future, her opportunities that are going to be in alignment with her within that organization. She's not just looking at whether or not she's happy today. She's thinking about where is my development and where am I going to be 5 years from now. Also looking at my coach. So not looking at our supervisors or the people who are ahead of us. We're looking at them as coaches, as someone who's going to help us get to the next realm. Our ongoing conversations. So we are no longer waiting for an annual review. We want to have conversations throughout the year with our coaches, with our fellow team members, with people outside of our department to find out how we are doing. And within our own performance, how is that going to help us in the next 5 years? I'm looking at my strengths when I look at my future, and I'm looking at the things that I am doing well, the areas that are going well for me, and I'm looking at that as in terms of my development. So how do I continue to look at my strengths and help them to create and grow? That's going to help me with my purpose, my development, my coach, my ongoing conversations. All of those stem from some of the strengths that I bring into my job. And then, of course, my life. So how do I fit my job into all of those different areas of my life? And this is our future. This is the way that we are looking at our jobs. And when we're talking about difficult stakeholders, looking at their future and looking at how they're going to continue looking at all of these items and if they're going to have a future within your organization. The other piece of it that's really important to think about when we're looking at our future is, how do I look at my purpose? How do I look at my development? And so once we do that internally, and we start to look at how we personally answer those questions, it makes it a lot easier for us to talk to others about those same questions. And when there is a disconnect between, for example, my development and the organization that I'm working for, then I do have an opportunity to be able to look at those things and see if there is a match. Is there a way that I'm going to be able to do this in the future? Are my ongoing conversations going to continue with this person who may be a difficult stakeholder? How am I going to continue my ongoing conversations with them? And so when we're looking at our difficult stakeholders, it gets to be a little bit confusing at times whether or not I'm looking at myself and my own personal future and my purpose, my development, or if I am a manager or a coworker or a team member with a difficult stakeholder. How are they looking at their purpose, their development, their coach, their ongoing conversations, and having those conversations either internally or with that person to see how they are all going to tie together to see what their future looks like. Is their future within your organization, or does their future go on to a different organization? So why is this part of the exam content outline? So all of the questions that we are looking at today and that we have been doing for more than 2 years now as part of looking at our exam content outline, we are looking at it to help you with your future. And part of your future may be working with difficult stakeholders. And that gets to be a little bit of a hard time when you're starting to think about those difficult stakeholders. So specifically, this topic is within the people domain, and it is covered under task 1. The enablers interpret the source and stage of the conflict, analyze the context of the conflict, evaluate, recommend, reconcile the appropriate conflict resolution solution. So it really breaks it down into 3 very simplistic enablers. However, the simplicity of the enabler does not mean that it is simple in order to get through or evaluate each one of these conflicts. And so part of what this is looking at it from the case-by-case scenario of the conflict itself. And so looking at the case with Gabrielle, for example, interpret the source and stage of the conflict. Well, a lot of that is what I was doing when I was speaking with Gabrielle about the source and the stage of the conflict. So when she was talking to other people in other departments, we were able to go through and have conversations about those past conversations that she had, analyze the context of the conflict. So then we were able to discuss, did she know that there was a conflict? And then when she did know, what was the appropriate conflict resolution solution? And so then we talked through and we were able to discuss what was the right type of resolution that was going to either be now suggested as a resolution, or were we past that point? And in some of those cases, we were definitely past that point. And it didn't resolve the conflict itself, but by having her go back and apologize to some people and let them know that she was sorry, that she had hurt their feelings, that was a conflict resolution solution. And so even though it might not have been the absolute conflict resolution solution for the entire issue, it did take care of the problem for specific team members that she was working with. The other case that we would look at for how we would use this is if you are dealing with a team member, again, who has a specific issue with another team member, you can go through and you can counsel through those team members having this type of conversation together. You can also use some of the questions that I had posed earlier about having them talk about the scenario, have you talk about or tell them what you might do differently in that situation. So 3 tips that you can use today. So these are the outcome-based initiatives that we talk about, that we are going to be using and talking about today, and help you to be able to see where these can be used and how you can use them better. So This is very simplistic, and I like the way that this goes from good, better, and best. So identify what needs to be improved, start improving it, and then keep moving. And I like this in general because even though I put this with difficult stakeholders, it's really very effective to use for any type of resolution that you need to make. So identify what needs to be improved. And you can do this very easily by going through the what, who, when, where, how often. So by asking those questions, you can look at with your difficult stakeholder, and you can look at what is the issue, who are they having that issue with, when is this arriving, where or how often is this particular issue coming up. And when you are thinking through what you're going to do to improve this situation, this is a really good practice and really something very easy to start with to help you start thinking about what you're going to discuss with this person and then how you are going to address it. So what you can then start to do is start improving it. So now what? Now that we've answered all of those questions, how does it improve? So what are we going to do differently based on what we identified as important? So how is it going to improve? When does it improve? And what if it does not improve? And those are just some of those basic questions that you can start asking. And so if you have a team member, for example, that is having some issues with other team members in your department or within your organization, you can go through and map out the who, what, when, where, why, and you can map all of those things out, and then you can start improving it. So if you look at and you find out what is the issue is that this team member does not speak well with other team members, and you can go through and you can call out who those team members are. Why are they having issues talking to each other? What is the true issue that they are having? And that's a very important piece of it to look at when you are looking at how you're going to improve that. So what specifically is that issue? And then once you look at that, how does it improve? When does it improve? And what if it does not improve? So having that type of conversation with that person, asking them about how it does improve after you've pointed out and talked through what that situation might look like. When does it improve? When does it improve? So having a date, having a time that you are going to check back in and make sure that everything is okay, and that if they were fighting or having an issue, that you can have a conversation with them to make sure that everything is okay or is working better now, and then what to do if it does not improve. And this depends on what that situation is in many cases. If it is a two employees who are just not getting along for whatever reason, what if it does not improve? Does that mean that you are going to have two team members who do not appreciate or get along with each other? Is that okay? If it is okay, outline what that looks like and how you would work through that. If it's not okay, talk about that. Talk about that with each person and talk about what that means if they have to improve. If both people have to improve, or if just one person needs to improve. But these are the things that we need to start working on, and then how to continue improving it. Because based on our people and what past situations have been, it doesn't mean just because you talk to someone about it that it's over forever. It might be better for a while, but then it might come back later and you might have to address it again. So the last part of this is to keep moving. And we outlined this as the good, better, best. So what does it mean to be the best? What does it mean to not have any conflict anymore? Well, to be completely honest, that's probably not true. It's probably not true to say that you're not going to have any conflict anymore and that everyone is going to get along great. That would be the best situation. But unfortunately, that isn't really the world that we live in. And so what we need to keep doing and keep moving is to keep working on those relationships. And when one falls or needs to be reevaluated, that we keep going back and that we keep trying to work towards being the best. And unfortunately, in most cases, we're not going to be the best. We're not going to come back with the best team ever. We're going to find the middle ground where on the majority of the days, things are going to be going great. On the other days, things might not be going as good. And that's okay as long as everyone is working towards getting better and getting along. So at this point, I'd like to take a few minutes and answer any questions. So you have a box in your, inside of your little box that says questions. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them into that box, and I will answer those questions as we go along. Right now, I'm not seeing any questions. So hopefully we get a question or two inside of that box. All right. Does your approach change when dealing with a lower level versus an executive level? It depends. First of all, on your relationship with that person prior to or as a result of the issue that was brought up. And so I would say for most people, yes, it's going to change a little bit, where people are going to act a little bit differently with someone that has the ability, for lack of a better term, to terminate you. So if you have an issue with somebody who does have that ability, then I would approach it differently from the aspect of making sure that you're being professional, that you are questioning and asking any questions that you have. And then if you really do need to get to that point where you are speaking to them and they're being disrespectful, it's okay to be able to call out that behavior and recognize what that issue is. Also, you need to be careful that if that person does have the ability to terminate you or to recommend you to be terminated, that you have done everything that you can to make sure that all of your ducks are in a row and that you are working in a way that is going to either reflect on what you've done in the past and not reflect on what that difficult person is saying or doing about your current situation. Next question. What if the new person is not willing to apologize? Well, if they're not willing to apologize, I wouldn't push it to continue to ask them to apologize. without knowing what the situation is about, it's a little bit hard to answer that question of what you would do. But I would say that if they're not willing to apologize, they're probably not sorry. And then if they're not sorry and that means a lot to you and they're not willing to apologize, that's something that you definitely need to be aware of. And you can't make somebody else do something that you want them to do. So if they're not willing to apologize, that's something that you need to consider and look at. Please discuss feedback, short and long term. So one of the things that you can talk about and that you can look at is feedback, both positively and negatively, and looking at the long term and the short term with both of those. And so if you are, for example, the difficult person that somebody is having an issue with and you are receiving that feedback, that is very important to you to go back and take a look at and to listen to and to look at how your behavior is being reflected in that feedback that's being given to you. In the short term, if you are the person providing the feedback to the person that is being labeled a difficult stakeholder, it's also very important that you, as I said earlier, kind of put all of your ducks in a row, that you know exactly what the situation was, you know what happened, and you know what is going to happen in the future. And so when you have those types of conversations, that you are documenting the feedback, that you're holding on to it. If it's short-term feedback, that you're looking at why you're having that type of discussion and what you want anyone to take away from that conversation. And you can do that in both the long term and the short term. Maybe they just don't feel it is appropriate. And that might be the case. This goes back to the new person is not willing to apologize and they don't feel that it is appropriate. I would also be curious to hear more about the situation and what exactly happened in it and how you would approach this person with that situation. There's so many different ways that situation could go that it's really hard for me to answer what that means. But obviously to you that's important, that they would not apologize for whatever was said or done. Do we have any more questions? All right, I'm going to keep the question box open, but I did want to go through a few more pieces of information for you of how RMC Learning Solutions can help you as you're going through and looking at project management and other skills. We do have the CAPM exam preparation. We do have the 5th edition CAPM exam prep materials, where we do have an exam prep book. We have the PM Fast Track Exam Simulator and Hot Topics flashcards. We have a really old date listed in here that we do not need to look at. I apologize. I had updated these slides, but I obviously missed the March date for CAPM. We also offer other ways to prepare for the PMP. We have the 11th edition materials included with your course registration. And so with this course, you can take it either instructor-led virtual, you can take an e-learning course, or you can take it on site with your organization. We also have the exam prep book, an exam PM fast track exam simulator, and the hot topics flashcards, which are all digital. And then we also have a downloadable audio book, the abridged edition, that can also help you study for your PMP with RMC Learning Solutions. We also have a book and a workbook, a fast track exam simulator, a hot topics flash book, an audio book that all relate to Agile and how you can get your instructor-led virtual, so you can take that course. You can take an e-learning course, or then also we can have an on-site. And if you have any questions about any of these materials, that you can always go through and you can talk to the people within our organization that can help you find out more information about any of these materials. We also have the business analysis. So we also have an instructor-led course. We have a book. We have the PM Fast Track Exam Simulator and Hot Topics flashcards. So before I show off the information for the for claiming your PDU, I do also want to invite you to connect with me either on LinkedIn or on Facebook for more information. If you have more questions, I will certainly go ahead and answer those questions. It does look like we have a CAPM class on July 16th through the 18th. So I apologize for not getting that onto the CAPM calendar. But again, we do have that class July 16th through the 18th coming up. Let's see, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. Here is your information for claiming your PDU. We do not have, excuse me, I don't know where I was going with that. We do have the information here for you to claim your PDU and be able to go on to the PMI website and get your PDU for dealing with difficult stakeholders for today. I will stay on, and if there are more questions, I will continue to answer those questions. Otherwise, I thank you for coming today. Thank you, and I hope that you have some new ideas and ways to deal with difficult stakeholders.